A huge jury verdict just got handed down, and now everybody on the internet is losing their minds. We're going to break down a really big story that's taking the internet and the media by storm on today's solo episode of the podcast. We're going to wade through the depths of the race baiting and misinformation and just absolute toxicity being spewed right now after, of course, a huge verdict was just handed down in the case of Karmelo Anthony, who, of course, is now convicted in the murder for first-degree murder of Austin Metcalf after this incident that people have probably heard about by now, but it all started at a track meet. Austin Metcalf had gotten into some sort of dispute with this guy, Karmelo Anthony. Now, Karmelo is black and Austin is white, as unfortunately people have decided to make relevant. And Karmelo had a knife with him. The details of the exact incident were litigated in court, and the jury found that Karmelo committed murder. So here is the breaking news from Fox when they handed down that verdict.
Fox News alert: the jury just sentenced Karmelo Anthony. We're going to be back with Brooke Taylor, who's live outside the courthouse. What do we have?
Hi, Jesse. Some pretty breaking news to give you right now. The jury has sentenced Karmelo Anthony to 35 years behind bars after finding him guilty of murder. I'm told that he is eligible for parole after he serves half his time. The jury had the option to give him as much as 99 years behind bars. But again, they have chosen to give him 35 years. And I do want to mention, we showed you those protests, a bunch of supporters out here. They've erupted again. Pretty shocking.
Well, yeah, some of the scenes from outside the courtroom are shocking, and we will take a look at some of that, as is stuff being spewed across the internet from both camps as well, but particularly from the pro-Karmelo camp. A lot of race baiting and misinformation coming out that we're going to wade through. But I'll just say this. Obviously, I wasn't there in the jury room. I wasn't there for the deliberations, all the testimony. I don't know everything that was presented in court, but based on my reading about this case, this does seem like the correct outcome. I certainly don't think Karmelo Anthony woke up one day and wanted to murder someone, but he had some sort of minor altercation with Austin Metcalf and then escalated it, pulled out a knife he was not supposed to have, and fatally stabbed him in the chest after, at most, a slight push. It is not self-defense to use lethal force when your life is not being threatened and when you are not facing that kind of force. The details, the more you look into it, the more clear it is actually that this wasn't a racial thing, at least not based on any of the evidence I've seen, yet because we live in a country that is increasingly polarized and divided, everyone's decided to make it all about race anyway. I'll also say that, well, of course they sometimes get things wrong and they're not perfect. I generally trust the outcome of jury verdicts. They're not always right, but I think much more often than not, when you get a room full of people with no connection to the situation, and both parties have a chance to make their case, the stakes are clear, everyone has to play by the same rules, evidence is weighed and counterweighed, arguments are heard and then rebutted, I think a jury generally gets the right decision in these kinds of cases. And even if they don't always get it, it's hard for me to imagine any better way to do it. I certainly don't think people from reading headlines or hearing talking heads give hot takes about the case have a better judgment of the situation than the people that were in that courtroom day in, day out, listening to the testimony from both sides. It seems to me that creating this extremely neutral, highly regimented and regulated scenario where these people get to deliberate and decide the outcome when they have no connection to the case, I can't really imagine any better or fairer way to litigate these disputes, and the jury did find Karmelo Anthony guilty. So I accept that verdict unambiguously. I think it's the correct call, and I don't think it's some proof that we are entering America KKK, however they put it on social media, this ridiculous era of, anti-black racism. I think it's just that a guy committed a terrible crime even if he wasn't always a terrible person, even if he didn't set out to do it that day intentionally, even if these situations are messy and complicated, and of course there should be a level of human sympathy and empathy for people on both sides. There is a family that is losing their son to jail for many years, but ultimately that's a rightful loss. That's the outcome that is appropriate, and they're not losing him for life like the Metcalf. So I do think there's nuance to this situation, but I don't think it's some sort of victim script of the system oppressing Black people. And I have to go through and clear up the absolutely rampant misinformation about this case, which is coming from both sides, by the way. And we're going to go through and do that now. Who's going to be the next Attorney General? Well, Trump just nominated acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, but that doesn't mean he'll actually get the job. You see, Blanche is haunted by the drama over the Epstein files release that he was involved in, and for defending the weaponization fund that proved quite controversial. So a couple key Republican senators might not vote to confirm him. That's why the odds here are not that heavily in favor of Todd Blanche actually becoming Trump's next Attorney General. From our channel partners at Kalshi, you can see that even after Trump formally nominated him, there's still only a 69% chance, according to the Kalshi odds, that he'll actually end up finalized with the gig. I'll be following this with great interest and keeping an eye on the prediction markets, because that's where the future is happening, including the future of politics. Kalshi's the first CFTC-regulated exchange dedicated to trading on the outcome of future events, and you can go ahead and get $20 free to trade when you spend $20 today on Kalshi using the code BRADP. Now let's get back into the show. First, though, let's just parse through some of these unhinged takes. So, for example, here is activist Thelma Anderson, who was at the scene of the courthouse and then went on media appearances, calling this a legal lynching, because that makes sense.
One thing that I would ask for people to do at this moment is pray for the Anthony family, because they have been legally lynched for the last year. And more so by this slaughterhouse of a courthouse, as well as the family of the Metcalfs. So the energy right now is very white supremacy. They have shown up to be the pigs that they display with hate. They are celebrating the loss of life and the loss of freedom.
It's actually normal that you would celebrate getting justice when somebody stabs another person in the heart and kills them, that they're held accountable. That doesn't mean you're celebrating the loss of life. And then there is no evidence that the Metcalf family is white supremacist or anything like that. And it is absurd beyond belief to call a judicial process where everyone gets their due process, a legitimate trial, arguments and evidence presented, and then an outcome is reached. That is not a lynching. By definition, it's not, because the whole point of a lynching is that it's done extrajudicially, without due process, by an angry mob in the streets. Also, no one's being killed, and he's going to jail for however many years, but will presumably get out. So the whole thing is just hysterical and ridiculous beyond belief. And I don't understand how these people can sleep at night, knowing that they're striking a match and throwing it into a tinderbox like this. They're just riling people up while everyone is so emotionally charged over what's, of course, an incredibly upsetting incident and case. Is just reckless and disgusting beyond words to me. But she wasn't the only one. Here's another clip from the civil rights activist Dominique Alexander. Let's hear him rant about why this is all just racism or something.
It showed very clearly that a black boy was allowed not one black soul on a jury. An all white jury convicted him in 2 to 3 hours. It lets us know that we are not going to be afforded the same laws as anybody else. And I give a damn about nobody that feels like I'm playing the race card here. For 400 years, our people have been at the liberty and have had to suffer at the liberty of these laws. I'm speaking facts because that blood of slavery is in my blood, not your blood. And it's not for you to look at me and say, I'm playing the race card. I'm just a black man living in America. The facts supports that.
I mean, the facts support that you are, in fact, a black man living in America. That's about it. What does the blood of slaves running through your veins have to do with anything? That doesn't make you right. That's not a point of evidence or argumentation in your favor. This guy sounds crazy. He's like, I am playing the race card. Okay, well, again, that's not an argument. And there's lots of black or non-white people who do absolutely believe that Karmelo Anthony is guilty in this case and don't see this as some sort of racial issue. Now, as for the fact that there were no black people on the jury, I mean, that's not a requirement. They're not required to have a black person on a jury. That isn't a thing. When they say that you are entitled to a jury of your peers, it just means other citizens. They don't have to match your demographics. If I got convicted for a crime or charged with a crime, rather, I'd have no right to have a gay person on the jury. That isn't a thing. And of course, there were black people in the jury pool that they were considering, but several of them had to be removed from consideration because they said they wouldn't be able to adjudicate the case fairly or to make a decision on the case fairly. And one of them, there's a quote said like he wouldn't be able to put a brother away for life or something, which kudos to him for being honest about the fact that he wasn't going to be able to be impartial, but that's why there's not necessarily a black juror. And it's not clear. I wasn't able to confirm this, but many people who were inside the courtroom said that there were other types of racial diversity on the jury. So some people say there were Asian members, there were Middle Eastern members so it wasn't just an all-white jury necessarily. That's not necessarily a true claim. All of it is just such a stretch, such a reach, because especially, and Fox News reported on this, the case against Karmelo had nothing to do with race. And in fact, at least 5 of the witnesses who testified for the prosecution and provided evidence, this is from Fox News, that Anthony was the aggressor and refused repeated requests to leave the team tent or otherwise provoked the confrontation, at least 5 of those witnesses were black. So it's not as if this was just the white man coming after a innocent black teenager, but that's really how they're framing this, with seemingly no regard for the consequences of stirring up racial tensions and animosity. There's also just been a genuinely astronomical amount of misinformation about this case. So I'm going to play you a clip from something called Afro TV, which is a black television station, apparently, and some of the hosts discussing this. It is one of the just least correct short clips of video I have ever heard in my life, and that is saying something. Take a listen to this.
You telling me a grainy video is shown to jurors, but it was shown in 4K clear to the people that witnessed it? No witness on that stand had that little man's back? What? None? 0 out of 21 people being questioned? Come on, man, I'm done with all of that. I feel the same way about white people, the same way they feel about my people. Yeah, try one of us.
Is that a threat? Because Miss Girl here sounds insane. What do you mean, how white people feel about us, I feel about them, try me? That sounds like a threat, first of all. And white people, at least I guess I can only speak for myself, don't feel any type of way about black people because of this case. At least you shouldn't. I just feel that Karmelo Anthony is in the wrong and was responsible for this after my reading about the evidence. And what she's saying is just absolutely not real. Multiple points she just made. So of course, she's saying 0 out of 21 of the witnesses had Karmelo's back. Well, first off, they're there to testify about what they saw or know, not to have someone's back. But that's the prosecution's witnesses. Of course, the prosecution's witnesses advanced a narrative favorable to the prosecution. The defense got to call their own witnesses. In every court case ever, or at least most, the witnesses called by the prosecution do not go to bat for the defendant. If they were going to do so, based on what they know or what perspective they have on the incident, they would get called by the defense. You should just have some level of basic literacy with how court cases work if you're going to go on television and rile up an audience about the outcome of a court case. Is that too much to ask? I don't know, man. And she wasn't the only one. The rest of this panel similarly crashed out. Let's keep going here.
One of us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even just following the case, I know I just, we've all been kind of keeping up with it. And just to see even that the judge, the defense attorney, and Austin Metcalf's father was in, a picture at a party they having a time. There is an alleged
fake. That's a fake image on social media, not a real image. Completely fake, and they just fall for slop they saw on Facebook and repeat it on TV. Well, that's astonishingly irresponsible. There is no image about showing the judge has some connection to the Metcalf family. That's not real.
Alleged post from Austin, from, of course, before he passed, that, he had 2 assault rifles on his, resting on himself in the car, saying that I dare one of the monkeys to come to this track meet today.
That is absolutely fake, not real. Once again, we're just repeating AI slop you saw on the internet somewhere. That is not real. That is not a piece of evidence that exists. There is no such post from Austin Metcalf
today. But this is someone where, Karmelo Anthony was a 3.7 GPA student working 2 jobs.
That's
but
fine.
He's the one that we're supposed to believe is a thug, though.
Right. Of course.
Well, he's the one that stabbed someone in the heart with a knife he brought to a track meet that he wasn't supposed to bring. I'm not even saying that means he was a thug or whatever, but he clearly acted in the moment in a very violent and irresponsible and illegal way. It doesn't negate other aspects of him or mean he was terrible in every single dimension of his life. But yeah, I just got dumber listening to that. And I'm astonished that a company would broadcast just such low-tier analysis and misinformation and slop. Like, that's shocking. And frankly, they should sue that television station. The family should sue that television station. But I really do. I wish I could say that was, it. That is not, in fact, it. There's so much more when it comes to misinformation about this case. So I'm just gonna and just absolutely insane race baiting as well. Just people stirring up racial strife for no real reason. I'll read you some tweets. Black people, please carry more than a pocket knife. Get their asses before they can get you. You should be on a list of some kind, sir, because you sound dangerous and scary, and you also make no sense. Carry more than a pocket knife. I mean, I don't mind Black Americans. I think it's great if they exercise their Second Amendment rights like anyone else. But this is clearly in the context of the Karmelo Anthony case where he stabbed and killed someone. So he didn't need more than a pocket knife. And he did, in fact, get the other person because they weren't trying to kill him. But he did kill them or kill Austin. So why you would encourage people to strap up and look for confrontations and kill white people and think you are not at all the insane and crazy one is beyond me. But this is just a small sampling of the tweets that were popping off after all this went down. Another tweet: stop sending your kids to these white schools, or encourage your kids not to be violent or to break school rules and bring weapons to track meets and then stab people. Rather than, there's nothing wrong with them going to white schools. Also, this was like an inter-school track meet. So they were going to see people from other schools anyway. It's just, because of one court case that went down somewhere a certain way, you should, self-segregate? That's insane and racist. Another person. So stand your ground is for whites only, apparently. 4 million views on that tweet. No. There are thousands of examples of stand your ground laws where they are applied to people of color as defendants. And there's also many examples where white people try to use them as a defense and is not sufficient. And in this case, it was found that what Karmelo Anthony did isn't protected under the stand your ground laws because he responded with lethal force and he initiated the confrontation. That was the conclusion, at least that we must presume the jury reached. So it's not that they don't apply to Black people. That's completely untrue. More here. It's only self-defense when a Black kid dies. Yeah, if you just ignore all the examples that don't suit your narrative so you never pay attention to them, maybe, I don't know. But even Cardi B got in on this after the sentence. Wow, just freaking wow. Disgusting. This is not justice. This is trying to make an example. That tweet had 10 million views. She put that out after the sentence came through of 35 years, which, as was noted in the Fox clip, 35 years means he could get out as soon as, I think, 17 years or something like that with parole. And that, I mean, yeah, trying to make an example, we probably should make an example that it's not okay to stab people in the heart with a knife. I think that is an example that we would like to set, actually, Cardi. So, not sure what you're storing up there. In fact, the sentence, he could have been sent away for basically for life. So, I've actually seen conservatives and right-wingers mad that he wasn't totally just locked away for all of his life, and they don't think that that is enough. I would have to know what the norm is for such a charge or what the standard is, because I would just want his sentence to be in keeping with that. But regardless, it is justice, and the only example they're making is that you can't kill people. And I wish I could say it was just influencers or singers or rappers. I guess I don't really know what Cardi B does exactly, whether that would count as singing or rapping. But it's also sitting members of Congress and elected Democrats like Jasmine Crockett getting in on the race baiting. We're going to watch a couple clips from her Clock It with Crockett live stream that she did last night, and it's genuinely insane stuff. Here's that first clip.
A lot of people don't want to speak up about their biases, which is exactly what voir dire is for. It is to determine who it is that may not be impartial. And I'm sorry, after being licensed for 20 years now, I am not necessarily convinced, not that I can tell you the name of one person on this jury.
So I love how she admits she doesn't know anything about this jury, but also insists that they must be biased and not impartial because they're all white, which is also, again, not even necessarily true. There weren't any black people on the jury. That's true, but there is no legal obligation to have one token black person on a jury. And regardless, there may have been other people of color, Asian people, Middle Eastern people, Hispanic people. It wasn't necessarily an all-white jury, but I guess the facts don't matter. And even if it was, that doesn't mean they're not doing a good job or they're not being impartial and fair. You would need some actual reason to believe that. You can't just assert that because they are white, they are therefore incapable of rendering a verdict, right? That seems totally at odds with our entire legal system and rationale, and there's no reason to believe that the jury was racially biased against Karmelo. Now, if evidence came out that that was the case, that would be horrible, and that would be a grounds for appeal. But absent that, just castigating white people as inherently like biased and flawed is itself biased and flawed. But the most despicable thing that Jasmine Crockett said is when she seemed to suggest that just by virtue of being a black woman, she and others face struggles the Metcalfs could not understand. Like, it's a genuinely deranged clip. Listen to this.
Black women, especially black women who have black male children, live in fear and agony every single day. A fear and agony that I promise you, the Metcalfs probably never spent a day living that way.
So this is just an insane thing to say about a family that just lost one of their children, that they don't understand your struggle as a black woman. It's not to say that, there aren't unique challenges and benefits, by the way, that being a black woman in America would entail, but to make that comparison literally the night of the verdict in the case where their son was murdered is insane. Because I could flip that back on you and say that Jasmine Crockett, they're experiencing a level of pain and grief and suffering that you couldn't possibly understand. Yet you're somehow trying to out-oppression Olympics them just because of your identity or the box you check off on the demographic census. It is absolutely inane and ridiculous and just a tone-deaf thing to say. She had to know that would get clipped and shared around the internet by her haters and her critics, but I guess she doesn't care because she crashed and burned out of the Texas Senate race and is losing her House seat. And I've got to say that I will shed no tears for the end of the political career of Jasmine Crockett. She's just one of the most toxic and abrasive and identitarian voices and forces in the Democratic Party, and she will not be missed. Though I guess maybe she'll be missed for the content. That's about it. But it's not just her. It's not just, people sympathetic to Karmelo Anthony here who had some terrible takes and were race baiting and were spreading misinformation. There was some of that from the other side as well. So I saw plenty of tweets like this. I'll read you here. Black people sure are mad they aren't allowed to kill white people without consequence. Wildest chimp out by far. That's a tweet with nearly 200,000 views. There's so much wrong with that, I don't know where to begin. If you are in any sort of unironic context using the term chimp out to refer to black people being upset, I mean, that is objectively racist and vile. You are comparing black people to chimps, to animals. You are mocking them in a racially abusive way, and in the process, belittling yourself and lowering yourself below any basic standard of decency and discourse. And two, here you are lumping. Obviously, there are some black people who are. That describes very few people. They aren't allowed to kill white people without consequences. It's a straw man and a caricature of what the people who support Karmelo, at least most of them, actually believe. A lot of them believe that he was defending himself. Now, if you think that's wrong, that's fine. Or they think that he wasn't treated fairly in the judicial system because he's black. If you disagree with that, as I do in this case at least, that's fine. Make your case. But if you're saying what they believe is that black people should be able to kill white people with impunity, you are absolutely misrepresenting their position. And then when you take that a step further and ascribe that belief to black people, even though it's really just some black activists and some online commentators and some portion of the black community, but honestly, I'm almost certain a huge majority of actual black Americans would not share any of those sentiments, and we don't have any sort of data to suggest that these are widespread or uniform opinions, then you are engaging in the same kind of collectivist, identitarian demonizing that we were just on all these crazy activists and left-wingers and pro-Karmelo Anthony people for doing. So you are exactly the worst of the worst in terms of modeling and echoing the most base and disgusting tendencies of genuine racism. Other than that, you're doing amazing. Hope the Twitter attention was worth it. Similarly, there was a commentator, and this clip was shared. I'm not going to insert it because it's disgusting, and it will probably get flagged by YouTube anyway. But she's on scene, and she's with some sort of camera crew or something. She's one of these Christian nationalists, far-right antagonist types. She looks around. She's surrounded by all these black people, and she leans forward and she whispers into the microphone, and she says, "They're chimping out." Again, just objectively racist and cowardly. Say it with your chest. Say it out loud. Don't lean in and whisper to the mic so all the people around you who are black teenagers, by the way, including some probably minors in the shot who are upset about this. That if you're going to be racist, at least, have some chutzpah and say it with your chest. And then she goes, it's, quote, dumb everywhere. Just disgusting, just racist, just going to intentionally inflame things. And this clip now has 8 million views on Twitter because people are just absolutely losing their minds and insane. This is genuinely racist. It is abusive. It helps absolutely nothing and serves only to be incendiary and hateful and pour fuel on the fire. So congratulations, whatever Christian nationalist Twitter thought. Like, you got your 5 seconds of attention. I hope that disgracing yourself and making everything worse was worth it. That's where I come back to with all of these folks. And there's also just like a lot of misinformation about this case. We already covered some of it from the kind of pro-Karmelo Anthony camp, but then also on the anti-Karmelo Anthony camp, a lot of things have just been repeated ad nauseum on social media that are simply not true. So here's a couple TikTok videos that were quite widely circulated, making some assertions that narrator, spoiler alert, are not in fact borne out by the facts. Let's watch.
Finding out Karmelo Anthony's family took all that money, gave him a public defender, and bought a new house is just the funniest thing I've ever heard.
$690,000 was raised and they bought a new house and security. And now Karmelo Anthony has a public defender instead of multiple Jewish lawyers, and he's trying to say it was self-defense. Yeah.
So this was widely shared all over the internet, this claim that Karmelo Anthony's family raised all this money and then took it and just stuck him with a public defender. It is absolutely not true. He briefly had a public defender at the very start of the case, and then after they received the fundraising money, they went and hired the services of a very high-profile Dallas defense attorney named Mike Howard. So any claim that you see circulating about how his family just took all the money and didn't even get him a lawyer is not true. And it's not good to spread false information about people. In the same way, they purchased these homes before they even withdrew the money. Yes, they moved. They were already this was not some impoverished family beforehand. They were a fairly well-to-do family. And so they did move and they did purchase homes, but that was actually before the fundraising. All of this is besides the point, but it is insane. The degree to which blatantly false information about this case is just everywhere. It's just all over social media. And I don't know how we get out of this toxic doom spiral that we are in, where people are fueling racial tensions and at each other's throats and thinking the worst of their neighbors and riling each other up to the point of, who knows, there could be riots, there could be crimes, there could be vandalism that could erupt from this. And much of it is based on objective misunderstanding of the facts and internet trolls who stir up passions and inflame tensions based on nothing or with vile, baseless rhetoric, and then just get a payout from Twitter or whatever for their views the next day and face no consequences or accountability of any kind. It's really disturbing. This story, I find to be a heartbreaking situation all around. I'm glad justice was served completely. I absolutely do send my best wishes to the Metcalf family. But the whole thing is a horrific situation that never should have happened. And it's a perfect microcosm of everything that's wrong with social media discourse and racial discourse in this country right now. That's just my take. You guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit the like button while you're at it. And we'll be back with more real soon.